Wisdom for the good life comes from God. Now, James just finished telling us about an unspiritual, earthly wisdom that shows itself in jealousy and in selfish ambition, and it leads to all sorts of evil practices in our lives. But there's a wisdom that comes from God. And this is a wisdom that God has graciously chosen to share with us so that we could have wisdom and understanding in this life. And it's wisdom for the good life. So that means that if we are living our lives by this wisdom, it leads us to a life that is so much more beautiful than this wisdom that shows itself in jealousy and in selfish ambition. And so here at the end of James chapter 3, James shows us what that life actually looks like. What does this wisdom look like in our lives? He says, but, so remember this is pointing back up here. It's talking about the wisdom that shows itself in jealousy and selfish ambition. This is the wisdom of the world. But the wisdom that is from above, that's the wisdom that's from God, is first pure. Now, think about what it said about the wisdom of the world. It talked about how it led to all sorts of evil practices. If you look up to when he was talking about using our tongues, that the tongue was a poison, that the tongue stained the entire body because of its evil. Now, contrast this with what it's saying about pure. This is innocent. This is just goodness. That the wisdom of God leads us to live innocent, pure, good lives that don't look like the lives from jealousy and selfish ambition. And then it's peaceable. Peaceable. It's not picking fights with people. It's not finding ways to disagree, but instead finding ways to unify. These are people who are more concerned about gaining a relationship and building a relationship than tearing a relationship apart. This is peaceable, maintaining relationships. Whenever there's disagreements and difficulties between them, making peace, being peaceable, being gentle. So this is recognizing that people around you aren't always going to be perfect. In fact, people around you are never going to be perfect, and neither are you. And recognizing that you can respond to that in kindness rather than in anger and in harshness and in the non-peaceable argumentation. Instead, you can approach them with gentleness, knowing people aren't going to be perfect, but we are called to kindness because these are people who are created in the image of God. Open to reason. Now, this is a weird translation, but it's the idea of being obedient. So for people who are in authority over you, and people like your parents, your teachers, people who have been set in authoritative positions over you, being obedient and compliant to those sorts of people as far as it pleases God. Full of mercy and good fruits. Mercy and good fruits. The mercy of Jesus ought to be overflowing from our hearts. We ought to remember how Jesus has shown us so much mercy, and we ought to turn that mercy and show it to others. And it should be good fruits coming out. Remember what he was saying again when we were talking about the words that come out of our mouths? That our mouth shouldn't be producing some good fruit and some bad fruit. No, this is saying good fruits, that wisdom from above produces good fruits. Impartial, being impartial, not picking favorites, not saying, oh, well, I like that person, so I'm going to benefit them, but I don't really like that person. Let's brush them off. Let's not share the gospel with them. Let's not value their opinion. It's impartial and it's sincere. Sincere, the word that's used there, it's like the opposite of a hypocrite. It's the opposite of someone who puts on a show or acts like something, but on the inside is not really there. Sincere is to be genuine, to actually be showing what is real in our hearts and actually genuinely be acting in kindness towards others. What comes from this? We talked about lives of jealousy and selfish ambition. They lead to a world of unrighteousness. They lead to every vile practice. Well, here it says a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. This leads to a life of Christ-likeness. Those who live in this wisdom live in peaceful humility instead of jealousy and selfish ambition. It brings righteousness instead of every vile practice. It leads to Christ-likeness, the real good life that comes from God.